Welcome in state quarters may look ordinary, but tiny differences in mint marks, strike, surfaces, and genuine errors can completely change what collectors see. So what separates everyday change from the examples worth a much closer look? Let's examine the clues hiding in plain sight. First coin. The 2000p Maryland, the old line state quarter, is the kind of coin that demonstrates one of the most important lessons in modern numismatics. A coin can be extremely common in ordinary condition and still become genuinely challenging at the highest levels of preservation. Released during the extraordinary nationwide excitement surrounding the 50-state quarters program, the Maryland quarter passed through cash registers, vending machines, banks, and household change jars by the hundreds of millions, which means simply finding one today is not unusual. The real question is what happened to an individual coin between the moment it left the Philadelphia Mint and the moment a collector examined it decades later. Tiny contact marks, weakly struck design elements, scratches, discoloration, environmental damage, and ordinary circulation can separate an everyday quarter from the remarkably clean pieces sought by registry-set collectors. Later, we will examine what authenticated examples have actually sold for, why those documented results matter more than sensational claims attached to ordinary pocket change, and which combinations of grade, strike, surface preservation, genuine mint errors, and professional certification can dramatically change collector interest. That distinction is especially important with this issue because the Philadelphia Mint produced 678,200,000 Maryland quarters, giving the coin an enormous original population rather than the low mintage normally associated with a classic rarity. PCGS consequently classifies the regular issue as common overall, while its condition census reaches MS68, illustrating that the serious challenge is not locating the date and mint mark, but locating exceptional quality. The story behind the coin begins with the 50-state quarters program, authorized by Public Law 105-124 and designed to honor the states in the order in which they joined the Union. Maryland entered the Union as the 7th state, and its quarter became the 7th design in the program and the second state quarter released during 2000, officially entering circulation on March 13. Demand for the program had become enormous by this point, and the Mint was producing state quarters on an industrial scale to satisfy both commerce and a public that had suddenly become fascinated with searching change. The Philadelphia issue carries a small P mint mark identifying its origin, while Denver produced its own D version. The coin retains the familiar George Washington portrait based on John Flanagan's long-running quarter design, with William Cousins credited by the Mint as the obverse sculptor for this version. The reverse was sculpted and engraved by Thomas D. Rogers, while the underlying Maryland design concept has also been associated by the Mint with William Croxuix. At its center stands the dome of the Maryland State House in Annapolis, a building with extraordinary national significance. Construction began in 1772. The Continental Congress met there from November 1783 through August 1784, and the building became connected with the ratification of the Treaty of Paris, ending the Revolutionary War. White oak leaf clusters frame the architecture, while the Old Line State refers to Maryland's famous nickname, traditionally associated with the Maryland line troops of the Revolutionary era. The reverse also carries Maryland, 1788, 2000, and EPLUBUSUNUM, turning a circulating quarter into a compact piece of state history. Physically, the 2000p Maryland quarter follows the standard copper-nickel-clad construction of circulating quarters from this period. It weighs approximately 5.67 grams, measures about 24.3 millimeters across, and has a reeded edge. PCGS summarizes the metallic structure as 75% copper and 25% nickel when averaged across the complete clad coin, although physically the quarter consists of copper-nickel outer layers bonded to a copper core. That exposed copper core is why a normal coin often shows a reddish or brownish line along its edge. This construction matters when evaluating suspected errors because an unusual-looking edge, color, or surface does not automatically indicate a rare planchet. During manufacture, prepared blanks were converted into planchets, upset to establish the rim, and struck between dies under tremendous pressure. From that process can come legitimate mint-made abnormalities, including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, missing or incomplete clad layers, broad strikes, struck-through material, and certain doubled or multiple strike errors. Their importance depends on how dramatic they are, whether enough of the design remains to identify the issue, and whether specialists can demonstrate that the abnormality occurred during manufacture rather than after circulation. Collectors should be particularly careful with supposed doubled dies. Mechanical or strike doubling can create flat, shelf-like secondary images that are easily advertised as valuable doubling, even when they are not recognized die varieties. Likewise, scratches, vice damage, grinding, heat exposure, chemical discoloration, and deliberate alteration can imitate errors to inexperienced eyes. A genuine major mint error authenticated by a respected grading service belongs in a completely different market category from a damaged quarter that merely looks strange, and that difference is where professional examination becomes essential. For ordinary 2000p Maryland quarters, condition is the central dividing line. A circulated example showing where on Washington's portrait, the lettering, the State House dome, and the oak leaves remains fundamentally different from an untouched Mint State coin. Under the Sheldon grading system, Mint State begins at MS60, but serious competition becomes increasingly demanding through MS64, MS65, MS66, MS67, and beyond. At those upper levels, graders evaluate much more than whether the coin has wear. They study luster, strike, contact marks, abrasions, rim quality, eye appeal, and the location of imperfections. A small mark hidden in a less important field may be tolerated more easily than a distracting hit across Washington's face or another visually dominant area. State quarters were manufactured as circulating coins and handled rapidly in bulk, so coins could acquire bag marks and contact abrasions before ever reaching the public. This helps explain why an issue with hundreds of millions struck can become progressively scarcer as grading standards rise. PCGS estimates enormous surviving numbers even in mint state and MS65 or better condition, reinforcing that the standard 2000p Maryland quarter is not a conventional rarity. Its published Coinfax auction record is $1,495 for an MS65 example sold by Heritage Auctions in January 2005, a useful historical result because it also demonstrates why auction records must be interpreted in their proper time and market context rather than treated as the automatic value of every similar coin today. Claims that a normal 2000p Maryland quarter should routinely be worth $2,000, $3,500, $4,800, or $6,000 are therefore not supported merely by its date and P mint mark. Prices in that territory would require something materially different, such as an important authenticated mint error, an extraordinary certified condition rarity, or another characteristic creating specialized competitive demand. And even then the actual price would depend on the specific certified coin and the market when it is sold. Authentication becomes even more important when a Maryland quarter appears unusually valuable because modern coins are easy to alter after leaving the mint. A collector evaluating a candidate should begin with the fundamentals. Confirm the correct diameter, approximately correct weight, normal reeded edge, proper design details, and expected Philadelphia mint mark. Then inspect the surfaces under controlled lighting and moderate magnification. Extremely high magnification can sometimes make insignificant marks look dramatic, so experienced collectors first study the whole coin before concentrating on individual features. A scale accurate to at least 1/100th of a gram can be useful when investigating a suspected planchet or missing clad layer error, but weight alone cannot authenticate it. Altered surfaces may reveal unnatural texture, tooling, polishing, chemical residues, or disrupted metal flow. Cleaning is another major problem. A coin that appears brighter after abrasive cleaning may actually become less desirable because original luster and microscopic surface structure have been damaged. For a potentially important specimen, services such as PCGS or NGC can provide authentication and standardized grading, while specialists may be needed for unusual errors. Preservation after discovery is equally important. Hold the quarter only by its edge, avoid rubbing or polishing it, and place promising examples in inert archival quality holders rather than soft plastic containing potentially harmful chemicals. Stable temperature, low humidity, and protection from fingerprints help preserve the surfaces. Unlike copper cents, clad quarters are not normally marketed through formal red, red-brown, and brown color classifications. Collectors instead pay attention to original luster, attractive natural tunning, and the absence of corrosion or environmental damage. A beautiful naturally toned piece can have strong eye appeal, but artificial tunning or altered color may hurt marketability rather than improve it. What ultimately makes the 2000p Maryland quarter fascinating is the contrast between enormous production and extreme condition selectivity. More than 678 million Philadelphia examples were struck, and the Mint produced more than 1.2 billion Maryland quarters when Philadelphia and Denver production are considered together. So scarcity at the basic Dayton Mint level was never the story. The collector challenge lies in separating ordinary survivors from pieces possessing unusually pristine surfaces, exceptional strike quality, outstanding eye appeal, or unquestionable mint-made abnormalities. Even PCGS survival estimates place the issue at the lowest end of its overall rarity scale, while certified MS-68 examples sit at the top of the published condition census. That is a classic example of condition rarity rather than absolute rarity. Auction results, population reports, and price guides should therefore be used together rather than in isolation, because populations can change as additional coins are submitted and market demand can rise or fall. Before assuming that an unusual Maryland quarter belongs in the $2,500, $3,900, $5,200, or similar premium range, a collector needs evidence that distinguishes it from the vast population of normal pieces. The documented regular issue auction record, cited by PCGS, is far below those hypothetical figures, making authentication especially important whenever a seller attaches a multi-thousand-dollar asking price to an apparently ordinary coin. Asking prices on marketplaces are not completed sales, and extraordinary prices associated with unrelated state quarter errors should never be transferred automatically to a normal Maryland quarter. What gives this coin lasting appeal is more grounded, and for collectors, more meaningful. It captures the national collecting phenomenon of the state quarters era, carries the architecture and revolutionary history of Maryland in miniature, and offers a challenging search for genuinely superior specimens hidden among a tremendous surviving population. Its value is determined not by a dramatic number printed beside a photograph, but by authenticity, preservation, grade, recognized rarity, error status, eye appeal, certification, and the willingness of informed collectors to compete for that particular coin. Next coin. The 2006p Nebraska State Quarter can look almost ordinary when it appears in a handful of change, yet among specialists, its story becomes much more interesting once preservation, strike quality, and certified grade enter the picture. It was created for mass circulation, not as a deliberately scarce collectible, and hundreds of millions of Nebraska quarters eventually entered American commerce. That enormous production figure makes an ordinary example easy to obtain, but it does not mean every surviving coin is equal. State quarters were transporting in bulk, poured into bags and bins, counted mechanically, rolled, shipped to banks, spent, and recirculated, giving their broad exposed surfaces countless opportunities to collect scratches and contact marks. For that reason, collectors searching for the finest examples are not simply looking for a 2006 quarter carrying a P. They are searching for coins that escape the normal punishment of high-speed production and commercial handling while retaining strong original mint luster, sharp design detail, clean fields, attractive surfaces, and exceptional eye appeal. The difference between a quarter pulled from circulation and one capable of competing near the top of a professional grading population can be enormous from a numismatic standpoint. As this story unfolds, the important question is therefore not whether Nebraska quarters are rare as a group, because they are not, but how rare a particular level of quality becomes. Later, the grading factors that control collector value, the role of genuine mint errors, and documented auction results for professionally authenticated examples will show why some Nebraska quarters command considerably more attention than others, and why a dramatic asking price seen online should never be confused with a verified market sale. Nebraska entered the 50-state quarters program as the 37th state honored, reflecting its admission to the Union on March 1, 1867, and the quarter was officially released on April 3, 2006. The program itself had transformed American circulating coinage into an enormous public history project, introducing 5 different state reverses each year and encouraging millions of people to examine coins that they might previously have spent without a second glance. Nebraska's reverse carries the inscription Chimney Rock beneath a scene built around one of the most recognizable landmarks of westward migration. Chimney Rock rises above the landscape, while a covered wagon and pioneers move across the foreground, recalling the thousands of emigrants who followed the Oregon, California, and Mormon trails across the Great Plains during the 19th century. The design was selected after a public process in Nebraska and was based on a concept submitted by Charles Vickers, who also sculpted the final reverse for the United States Mint. Surrounding inscriptions identify Nebraska, the statehood year 1867, the issue year 2006, and E.P.L.U.B.U.S.U.N.U.M. On the obverse appears George Washington in the modified portrait used throughout the state quarters era, based on John Flanagan's historic Washington design and adapted by William Cousins. The P Mint mark identifies the coin as a Philadelphia Mint product, distinguishing it from Nebraska quarters struck at Denver with a D. This was also a period of strong U.S. economic activity before the financial crisis that would emerge later in the decade. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, real U.S. gross domestic product increased 2.8% during 2006. Against that modern economic backdrop, the Nebraska quarter deliberately looked backward, using a piece of everyday money to preserve imagery associated with migration, exploration, endurance, and the transformation of the American West. The physical coin was manufactured to the familiar specifications of a modern circulating quarter, approximately 24.26 millimeters in diameter, 1.75 millimeters thick, and 5.67 grams in weight, with a reeded edge. Its construction is copper-nickel clad rather than solid silver. The outer layers are composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a core of pure copper, producing an overall composition of approximately 91.67% copper and 8.33% nickel. That layered structure explains the copper-colored band normally visible along the edge and becomes particularly relevant when collectors evaluate suspected missing clad layer errors. The Philadelphia Mint struck 318 million Nebraska quarters in 2006, while Denver produced another 276,400,000, placing total circulating Nebraska quarter production at 594,400,000 pieces. Those numbers immediately establish an essential fact. The normal 2006 Nebraska quarter is not rare because of low mintage. Its more meaningful scarcity develops at exceptional grades or when a legitimate production error is present. During manufacturing, blanks were punched from clad strip, processed into planchets, given an upset rim, and then struck by obverse and reverse dies in high-speed coinage presses. Minor differences in die condition, striking pressure, planchet quality, and handling can affect sharpness and surface appearance. On a superior Nebraska quarter, collectors want to see energetic cartwheel luster moving naturally across the surfaces under light, clean fields, minimal marks on Washington's portrait, and well-defined reverse details around Chimney Rock, the wagon, landscape, and lettering. Because the coin is copper-nickel clad, traditional copper coin classifications such as red, red-brown, and brown do not apply. Natural tunning may occur, but originality and visual appeal matter more than simply making the surfaces appear bright. Cleaning, polishing, dipping, or abrasive rubbing can destroy the microscopic flow lines responsible for mint luster, meaning an artificially shiny quarter can actually be less desirable than an untouched example with subtle natural tunning. That leads directly to the grading room, where the Nebraska quarter's enormous mintage becomes less important than the condition of one individual specimen. A coin showing actual friction from commerce belongs in a circulated grade, while an uncirculated example can fall anywhere from MS60 upward on the Sheldon scale, depending on its preservation. At MS63 or MS64, noticeable contact marks can remain even though the coin has no circulation wear. MS65 requires a considerably more attractive overall appearance, and MS66 and MS67 demand progressively cleaner surfaces, stronger visual quality, and fewer distracting imperfections. At the extreme upper end, tiny differences become financially important because collectors building highly ranked registry sets may compete for coins representing the finest certified quality available. Even so, a certification label does not transform a common coin into an automatic fortune. Published PCGS auction data illustrate this clearly. PCGS Coin Facts lists an auction record of $2,350 for a 2006 Nebraska quarter, graded MS68, sold by Heritage Auctions in January 2017. That is a genuine documented result for an unusually high-grade certified example, not evidence that ordinary Nebraska quarters should sell for thousands of dollars. Claims of routine values around $3,200, $4,150, or $4,900 for normal examples should therefore be treated cautiously unless a specific coin possesses independently verifiable characteristics capable of supporting such a valuation. A genuinely important authenticated error or an exceptional condition rarity could occupy a very different market from an ordinary quarter, but no responsible appraisal can assign a premium merely because the date and mint mark match. Current price guides, grading service population reports, and recent completed auction transactions should be examined together because certified populations and market demand change over time. An old auction result provides valuable evidence of what collectors once paid for a particular certified specimen. It does not guarantee what another coin will bring today. Errors create another layer of fascination, but this is also where careful authentication protects collectors from expensive mistakes. Legitimate minting errors can occur on modern quarters, including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, missing clad layers, struck-through errors, broad struck, and multiple strikes when the physical evidence supports the diagnosis. None of these should be assumed simply because a coin looks unusual. A quarter damaged by machinery after leaving the mint may develop flattened areas or distorted edges. Chemicals can change its bulk, grinding can reduce its weight, heat can alter its surfaces, and deliberate manipulation can imitate features that inexperienced collectors mistake for mint errors. Apparent doubling also deserves caution because machine doubling and die deterioration are fundamentally different from a recognized double die variety. For the regular 2006 Nebraska issue, collectors should not invent a famous variety simply because an online listing uses an impressive description. If a purported variety cannot be supported by recognized attribution references or professional examination, it should be treated as unconfirmed. Basic evaluation begins with a precise scale, measurements, good lighting, and moderate magnification. Compare the suspect coin with a known normal specimen and study the edge, rims, lettering, design alignment, surface texture, and metal flow. For a coin believed to justify a premium of several $1,000s, photographs and home measurements are not enough. Authentication by a respected service, such as PCGS or NGC, and specialist error attribution when appropriate, can become essential. Counterfeiting of an inexpensive circulated Nebraska quarter makes little economic sense, but alteration becomes more plausible when someone is attempting to manufacture the appearance of an expensive error. The higher the claimed value, the stronger the evidence a buyer should demand. Preservation completes the Nebraska quarter's journey from circulating money to serious collectible, because once an unusually clean example is discovered, improper handling can erase much of what made it special. A promising coin should be held by the edge over a soft surface and never wiped to remove fingerprints, haze, or dirt. Even a seemingly harmless cloth can leave microscopic hairlines that become obvious under grading room illumination. Inert, archival quality flips, capsules, or certified holders offer far better long-term protection than loose storage, while stable temperature and moderate humidity reduce the risk of environmental damage. Collectors should also remember that rarity is not frozen in time. More high-grade coins can be submitted to grading services, population reports can expand, registry competition can change, and auction demand can move in either direction. What gives the 2006 Nebraska quarter lasting numismatic interest is therefore not a promise that every example will appreciate, but the combination of a nationally recognized collecting program, an evocative Western design, a documented Philadelphia mintage of 318 million pieces, and the surprisingly difficult search for extraordinary preservation within that enormous production run. The finest certified coins attract attention because achieving exceptional quality on a mass-produced circulating quarter is fundamentally different from merely finding the correct date. Likewise, a dramatic authenticated mint error can be valuable because of the rarity and character of the error itself, not simply because Nebraska appears on the reverse. Any estimate in the Thra, Zarat, Dulk, Fuv, Zara region would need to be justified by the individual coin's authenticated attributes and contemporary market evidence rather than by the issue alone. The documented regular issue record noted earlier provides an important reality check. In the end, the strongest Nebraska quarters tell two stories at once, one about pioneers moving past Chimney Rock on their way west, and another about a modern coin surviving the machinery, transportation, handling, and circulation of 21st century America in a condition exceptional enough to make demanding collectors stop and look twice. Next up, pick up a 2010 Grand Canyon National Park quarter, and at first glance, there may be nothing about it that seems mysterious. Washington faces left on the obverse, a rugged piece of Arizona landscape fills the reverse, and the familiar copper-nickel construction identifies it as everyday American money. But an experienced collector does not stop at that first impression. Turn the coin slowly beneath a single light source, and the investigation immediately becomes more precise. Is the date correct? Is the small p mint mark sharp and undisturbed? Does the original mint luster roll across the fields, or has circulation reduced it to a dull surface? Are the high points of Washington's portrait beginning to show friction? On the reverse, are the rock formations crisp? Are the pine trees distinct? And are the lettering and rims complete? Those questions matter because this quarter belongs to the opening year of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, and while ordinary examples remain readily obtainable, exceptionally preserved pieces occupy a much narrower collecting category. The secret is not hidden in the date alone, and the Philadelphia mint mark does not automatically make the coin rare. What serious collectors are trying to locate is a combination of originality, unusually clean surfaces, excellent strike quality, powerful luster, attractive kulke, and sometimes a genuine mint-made error that can be distinguished from damage received after the coin left the mint. Later in this investigation, we will examine what professionally authenticated examples have achieved in the marketplace and why certain coins attract dramatically more competition than the enormous population of ordinary survivors. Before any value can make sense, however, we need to understand exactly what this quarter represents, because its importance begins not with an auction room, but with a new chapter in American circulating coinage. The Grand Canyon quarter was released in 2010 as the fourth design of the newly launched America the Beautiful Quarters program, following Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas, Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, and Yosemite National Park in California. The program succeeded the enormously popular 50-state quarters initiative and the 2009 District of Columbia and U.S. territories quarters. But its subject changed from states and jurisdictions to nationally significant landscapes and historic sites. Grand Canyon National Park was an obvious candidate for Arizona, yet the history represented on the coin reaches deeper than the park's modern identity. The area was first established as Grand Canyon Forest Reserve in 1893, became a national monument in 1908, and was designated a national park in 1919. The quarter's reverse depicts a view of the granaries above the Nankoip Delta along the Colorado River, with the immense canyon walls rising behind them. The design was created and sculpted by United States Mint sculptor engraver Phoebe Hemphill, and the inscriptions Grand Canyon, Arizona, EPLUABUSUNUM, and 2010 surround the landscape. On the obverse is the familiar portrait of George Washington, originally created by John Flanagan, and restored for the America the Beautiful series using the portrait that had appeared on quarters before the state quarters modifications, accompanied by United States of America, Liberty, In God We Trust, quarter dollar, and the P Mint mark. That small letter is our next important clue. It tells us this circulation strike came from the Philadelphia Mint. Philadelphia produced 34,800,000 Grand Canyon quarters, while Denver struck another 35,400,000 for 70.2 million circulation strikes between the two facilities. Those figures are far lower than the hundreds of millions seen for many state quarters, but they still do not make an ordinary 2010p a major rarity. The relatively restrained production reflects the period in which the coin appeared. America was emerging from the Great Recession, unemployment remained high during 2010, and demand for circulating coinage had been affected by reduced economic activity and the recirculation of existing coins. Against that subdued economic setting, the Mint introduced a program celebrating landscapes of national importance, and the Grand Canyon issue became one of the earliest representatives of that new collecting era. Now place the quarter on a precision scale, and the investigation moves from history to metallurgy. A normal circulation strike 2010p Grand Canyon quarter should weigh approximately 5.67 grams and measure 24.26 millimeters in diameter, with the familiar reeded edge used on U.S. quarters. It is not a silver coin. Its outer layers are copper-nickel alloy bonded to pure copper core, producing an overall composition of approximately 91.67% copper and 8.33% nickel. Look at the edge, and a normal example will usually reveal the copper core between the lighter-colored outer layers. That simple observation can prevent one of the most common mistakes made by beginning collectors, because the visible copper band is normal and is not evidence of an error. During production, blanks were punched from bonded metal strip, processed into properly prepared planchets, given an upset rim, fed into high-speed presses, and struck between dies carrying the Washington obverse and Grand Canyon reverse. The tremendous speed of modern production means that even a coin that technically never circulated can acquire contact marks during handling, transportation, counting, and storage. This is why the next stage of examination should happen under good light rather than aggressive magnification. Rotate the quarter. On an original Mint State coin, bands of light should travel across the surface in a characteristic cartwheel pattern created by microscopic metal flow during striking. If that luster is broken on the highest points, actual wear may be present. If the fields are covered with parallel hairlines, the coin may have been cleaned or wiped. If the surfaces look unnaturally glossy or mirror-like in random areas, polishing may have occurred. Traditional red, red-brown, and brown designations used for copper cents do not apply to copper-nickel-clad quarters, so color here means something different. Collectors evaluate natural silver-gray appearance, original brilliance, attractive tunning, and overall eye appeal. A lightly toned coin with completely original surfaces can be preferable to a bright coin that has been chemically or mechanically altered. Then move to the strike itself. Study Washington's hair and portrait details, the rims and lettering, and the intricate reverse landscape. Weakness caused during striking must be distinguished from wear caused after the coin entered circulation. That distinction can be subtle, but it becomes crucial when professional graders decide whether a coin belongs in a circulated grade or qualifies for the Mint State category. This is where an ordinary Grand Canyon quarter can separate from an exceptional one. Professional grading uses the 70-point Sheldon scale, with uncirculated business strikes classified from MS-60 through MS-70. A coin can technically be mint state and still have numerous contact marks, weak eye appeal, or an unattractive strike. As grades climb through MS-64, MS-65, MS-66, and MS-67, graders expect increasingly cleaner surfaces, stronger visual appeal, and fewer distracting imperfections. At the highest levels actually encountered for this issue, tiny marks that most people would ignore can become decisive. That creates condition rarity. The date itself can remain obtainable, while coins meeting an exceptionally demanding preservation standard become far more difficult to locate. This distinction also exposes the problem with assuming that every 2010p Grand Canyon quarter can command four-figure prices. Documented auction evidence does not support that conclusion for ordinary pieces. PCGS Coin Facts lists an auction record of $1,175 for a regular 2010p Grand Canyon quarter graded MS-68, sold through Heritage Auctions in September 2017. That result is impressive for a modern quarter, but it belonged to an exceptionally high-grade certified specimen and cannot be transferred to a circulated coin simply because both carry the same date and mint mark. Therefore, if someone claims that a normal-looking example should be valued at $1,550, $1,725, $1,890, or roughly $2,000, the claim needs evidence beyond the coin's identity. A legitimate coin reaching such territory would require characteristics that the market recognizes as substantially scarcer, potentially extraordinary certified quality, an important authenticated mint error, or another demonstrably rare attribute. And there is no responsible basis for assigning those amounts to a normal example without comparable verified sales. This is why experienced collectors examine recent completed auctions, grading service population reports, and certification data rather than relying on online asking prices. A seller can ask almost any amount. A completed transaction between informed participants provides much stronger evidence. Even a genuine historical auction record must be interpreted carefully because grading populations grow, new examples are discovered, registry competition changes, and market demand can rise or fall. The label on a certified holder matters, but the coin inside it, its surfaces, strike, originality, and eye appeal, still drives the competition. Errors require an entirely different kind of investigation because damage can easily masquerade as something valuable. Begin by forgetting dramatic marketplace descriptions and examine how the metal actually behaved. Genuine modern quarter errors can include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, struck-through errors, broad strikes, multiple strikes, and missing clad layer errors when the diagnostic evidence demonstrates that the abnormality occurred during mint production. But finding a strange shape, unusual color, doubled-looking letter, or distorted edge is not enough. Post-mint damage is enormously common. A quarter can be crushed, scraped, ground, heated, exposed to chemicals, caught in machinery, or intentionally altered, and each of those processes can produce an appearance that seems extraordinary to someone seeing it for the first time. Suspected doubling deserves particular caution. Machine doubling often produces flat, shelf-like secondary details and should not automatically be described as a doubled die. A true double die attribution requires the appropriate die characteristics and should be checked against established references rather than invented from photographs. For the 2010p Grand Canyon quarter, there is no justification for claiming a famous high-value variety unless it can be matched to a recognized attribution or verified by qualified specialists. Authentication should begin with the normal specifications: approximately 5.67 grams, the correct diameter, a properly reeded edge, authentic design details, normal alignment, and an undisturbed P mint mark. Weight differences can sometimes provide useful evidence when evaluating a suspected missing clad layer or unusual planchet, but a scale cannot prove an error by itself. Examine the edge for signs of filing or grinding and the surfaces for displaced metal, tool marks, scratches, unnatural texture, or chemical alteration. If the coin appears significant enough that a four-figure valuation is being considered, independent professional certification becomes especially important. Services such as PCGS and NGC can authenticate and grade coins, while complex mint errors may require specialized attribution. Counterfeiting an ordinary quarter is generally economically pointless, but altering an inexpensive genuine coin to resemble an expensive error is a more realistic concern. The greater the claimed premium, the more carefully provenance, certification, diagnostics, and comparable sales should be investigated. There is one final test that does not require a loupe at all: whether the coin has been preserved in a way that allows its original qualities to survive. Never rub a promising Grand Canyon quarter, even if fingerprints or dirt are visible, because cleaning can permanently alter the microscopic surface and destroy the luster that professional graders expect. Hold the coin by its edge, preferably over a soft surface, and store it in an inert archival quality holder or capsule. Avoid flexible holders containing harmful plasticizers, excessive humidity, large temperature changes, and unnecessary handling. A fingerprint that seems harmless today can become increasingly visible as oils react with the surface. Preservation matters especially with high-grade modern coins because their premium can depend on differences so small that one new scratch can change the way a grader or buyer views the piece. That brings the investigation back to the question that made this quarter interesting in the first place. With 34.8 million Philadelphia examples originally produced, the 2010 Grand Canyon quarter is not scarce simply because it exists, and most circulated survivors should be understood as common collectible coins rather than hidden four-figure treasures. What specialists compete for are the outliers: extraordinarily well-preserved pieces approaching the finest certified levels, coins with unusually compelling strike and eye appeal, and unquestionably genuine errors whose rarity can be demonstrated. Published population figures should always be treated as changing snapshots rather than permanent survival counts, because additional coins can be submitted and previously certified pieces can sometimes be resubmitted. Likewise, a theoretical valuation between approximately $1,500 and $2,000 cannot responsibly be attached to this issue without evidence from the individual specimen and contemporary comparable sales. The verified regular issue auction record discussed earlier shows exactly why restraint matters. Yet the coin's long-term historical interest reaches beyond price. It represents the first year of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, preserves an image of one of the nation's most extraordinary landscapes and the ancient granaries above the Nankoip Delta, and captures a moment when American circulating coinage became a miniature gallery of national parks and historic places. The most rewarding way to examine one, therefore, is not to begin by asking how much money it might bring. Begin with the date, the Philadelphia Mint mark, the edge, the strike, the lettering, the landscape details, the surfaces, the luster, the color, and the possibility of genuine mint-made abnormalities. Only after those clues have been studied carefully does value enter the picture, and that disciplined sequence is what separates numismatic investigation from speculation. Last coin. The 2014 Shenandoah National Park quarter is exactly the kind of modern American coin that can hide its most important clues in plain sight. Millions of people have handled quarters from the America the Beautiful series without ever looking beyond the denomination. Yet experienced collectors approach this Denver issue almost like investigators examining physical evidence. They begin with the small d mint mark, then move across Washington's portrait, the exposed fields, the lettering, the rim, and finally the mountain scene on the reverse, searching for subtle differences in strike, luster, contact marks, and preservation. The reason for that scrutiny is not that every Shenandoah quarter is rare, far from it, but that mass-produced circulating coins can become surprisingly difficult to locate in extraordinary condition. A quarter may leave the dies without circulation wear and still acquire abrasions during mechanical handling, transportation, counting, bagging, and distribution, so technically uncirculated does not necessarily mean visually exceptional. The finest survivors must escape much of that punishment while preserving the microscopic metal flow responsible for original mint luster. Add the possibility of a legitimate minting error, and two coins carrying exactly the same date and mint mark can belong to completely different collecting categories. That is where the mystery begins. Later, we will examine the characteristics that actually influence collector value and look at a documented market result for an exceptionally graded example. But those numbers only become meaningful after understanding why one specimen can separate itself from an enormous population of ordinary quarters. The first rule is therefore simple: never judge this coin from the date alone. Its real numismatic identity emerges from the relationship between production, preservation, certification, rarity at grade, and the willingness of advanced collectors to compete for quality. The landscape on the reverse takes that investigation into the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. Shenandoah National Park was the 22nd site honored by the America the Beautiful Quarters program, and the second design released in 2014. The program itself had begun in 2010 under federal legislation that authorized circulating quarters honoring national parks and other nationally significant sites, extending the idea of changing quarter reverses after the enormous public response to the earlier state quarters era. Shenandoah's design depicts a hiker standing on a rocky summit and looking across the mountainous terrain, an image based on the view from Little Stony Man. United States Mint sculptor engraver Phoebe Hemphill designed and sculpted the reverse, while the surrounding inscriptions read Shenandoah, Virginia, EPLUBUSUNUM, and 2014. The imagery is deliberately human in scale. Instead of presenting only a distant landscape, the lone hiker gives the viewer a point of connection to the park's overlooks, trails, and rugged geography. Shenandoah National Park was established in the 20th century, and the quarter celebrates a protected landscape within easy reach of heavily populated parts of the eastern United States. On the opposite side appears George Washington, derived from John Flanagan's historic portrait, along with United States of America, Liberty, In God We Trust, $quarter, the year, and the mint mark. That D identifies Denver, and Denver struck 197,800,000 Shenandoah quarters for circulation, compared with 112,800,000 produced at Philadelphia. The coin arrived during an American economy that was continuing its long recovery from the Great Recession, giving this modern commemorative circulation series a very different economic setting from the boom years surrounding the earliest state quarters. Yet the quarter itself was designed for ordinary commerce, traveling from the mint through financial institutions and eventually into tills, vending machines, pockets, rolls, and change jars. That journey explains why the next part of the investigation has less to do with history books and more to do with metal. A normal 2014 D Shenandoah circulation quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams, measures about 24.3 millimeters in diameter, and carries a reeded edge. Its construction consists of copper-nickel outer layers bonded to a pure copper center. PCGS describes the outer material as 75% copper and 25% nickel over that copper core. This is why a copper-colored band visible around the edge is normal rather than evidence of a rare error. Under controlled lighting, however, the surfaces can reveal far more. Freshly struck coins develop microscopic flow lines as metal is forced outward under tremendous striking pressure, producing the rotating cartwheel effect collectors call mint luster. Tilt a strong, uncirculated Shenandoah quarter beneath a light, and that luster should move naturally across the fields. Friction from circulation interrupts it, while abrasive cleaning can leave fine parallel hairlines and an unnatural brightness. Because this is a copper-nickel-clad quarter, the red, red-brown, and brown color designations familiar to collectors of copper cents do not apply. Instead, specialists judge originality, natural silver-gray color, tunning, brilliance, and overall eye appeal. Then comes the strike. Examine Washington's hair and facial details, the lettering, rims, and broad open areas where marks can be distracting. Turn to the reverse and study the hiker, the rocks, the mountain contours, and the smallest design elements. A weakly transferred detail created during striking is not the same thing as ware produced by circulation, and understanding that difference is crucial. Modern quarters were struck rapidly for commerce, and contact between coins can leave marks before circulation even begins. This explains one of the great paradoxes of modern collecting. 197.8 million Denver pieces can exist originally, yet an exceptionally clean specimen can still be far harder to find than the mintage suggests. The coin is common by date and mint, but quality becomes its own form of scarcity. Professional grading makes that scarcity measurable. On the Sheldon scale, mint state business strikes begin at MS60 and theoretically extend through MS70, but each step upward demands progressively better preservation. At the lower mint state levels, a Shenandoah quarter can remain uncirculated while displaying numerous abrasions, dull areas, or weak eye appeal. By MS65, collectors expect a much more attractive coin. MS66 and MS67 require increasingly limited distractions, and at MS68, the standards become severe enough that small imperfections invisible to casual observers can determine whether a coin qualifies. This is where market psychology becomes important. Registry set collectors are not necessarily competing for another 2014 D quarter. They may be competing for one of the finest certified representatives of that exact issue, and population rarity at the uppermost grade can matter more than the original mintage. Even so, verified market evidence places strict limits on responsible claims about value. PCGS currently lists an auction record of $675 for a 2014 D Shenandoah graded MS68, recorded from a May 2021 eBay transaction. PCGS also specifically notes that it does not take responsibility for the accuracy or authenticity of eBay listings. That documented figure is important because it does not support casually assigning values of $3,350, $4,600, or $5,850 to ordinary 2014 D quarters. Those kinds of figures would require extraordinary, independently verifiable circumstances, such as a genuinely significant authenticated error or some other exceptional characteristic backed by actual comparable market evidence, and reliable records should be produced before such a claim is accepted. Current guide information likewise treats normal examples as inexpensive coins rather than four-figure rarities. An asking price is not an auction record, and a seller placing a huge number beside a photograph does not establish market value. Certification, grade, rarity, originality, eye appeal, population data, and completed comparable sales are what transform speculation into evidence. Errors are where that evidence becomes especially important, because an unusual-looking quarter is not automatically a mint mistake. Authentic errors can occur during modern coin production. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, struck through material, multiple strikes, and missing clad layer errors are established categories when the physical diagnostics demonstrate how the abnormality occurred. But those categories should never be assigned merely because a coin looks strange in a photograph. A quarter can suffer extraordinary damage after entering commerce. Machinery can crush or scrape it, chemicals can skulk it, heat can alter its appearance, tools can flatten lettering, grinding can reduce its weight, and deliberate manipulation can create effects intended to resemble errors. Apparent doubling requires the same discipline. Mechanical doubling can leave flat, shelf-like secondary images and should not be confused automatically with a genuine doubled die. For the regular 2014 D Shenandoah issue, reliable attribution should come from established references or qualified specialists. Where supposed high-value die variety cannot be verified, it is more accurate to call it unconfirmed than to invent a rarity. Start authentication with measurements. Compare the coin's approximately 5.67 grams standard weight and 24.3 mm diameter with the suspected specimen, inspect its reeded edge, confirm the design and Denver mint mark, and examine metal flow around any abnormal area. A missing clad layer candidate, for example, requires more than unusual calque. Weight, exposed metal characteristics, surface texture, and professional examination can all matter. Counterfeiting an ordinary circulated quarter offers little incentive, But ultung, a genuine, inexpensive coin to imitate an expensive error, is a much more realistic concern whenever someone is seeking a large premium. If a specimen is being represented as a multi-thousand-dollar rarity, authentication by a respected grading service, and where necessary, specialist error attribution should come before any dramatic valuation. The higher the claim, the stronger the evidence should be. Preservation is the final part of the equation because a genuinely superior Shenandoah quarter can lose much of its numismatic appeal through one careless attempt to improve it. Never polish the surfaces, rub away dirt, use metal cleaner, or wipe the coin with a cloth. Microscopic hairlines can permanently disturb original texture even when the coin looks brighter afterward. Handle promising pieces only by the edge, preferably above a soft surface, and store them in chemically inert archival holders, capsules, or professionally sealed grading holders. Stable temperature and controlled humidity help protect the metal, while direct handling should be minimized because fingerprints contain oils and salts capable of leaving persistent marks. This preservation discipline matters most at the upper grades, where the difference between two otherwise impressive coins may come down to a tiny abrasion, a patch of disturbed luster, or a distracting mark in a focal area. It also explains why long-term collectability should not be confused with guaranteed financial appreciation. The 2014 Shenandoah quarter has enduring historical appeal as part of the America the Beautiful series, as a miniature representation of one of Virginia's defining landscapes, and as a surviving artifact of modern American circulating coinage, but its market remains governed by supply and demand. Grading populations can change as more coins are submitted, price guides can move, and yesterday's record does not guarantee tomorrow's result. With 197,800,000 Denver examples originally minted, the standard issue is fundamentally common. The documented MS-68 record of $675 demonstrates how exceptional condition can create a premium, while simultaneously showing why unsupported claims in the thra, zara zarut, dulk sucks, zara range should not be presented as normal market reality. The collector who understands this coin, therefore, looks past the dramatic price tag and returns to the evidence. The D-mint mark, strike, surface preservation, natural calque, uninterrupted luster, reverse detail, error diagnostics, professional grade, population data, and verified sales. That careful examination is what turns 25 cents of circulating money into a serious numismatic investigation. And every coin examined with that same discipline has another story waiting beneath its